My name is Grace, and this isn't just a story about a holiday dinner. It's about a pie, a phone call, and the moment I realized that dignity sometimes comes wrapped in silence. I hadn't spoken to my son in 5 years. Not since the day I left the house I helped him keep the home I once thought I'd grow old in. The silence between us wasn't loud. It was more like dust settling in a room no one entered anymore. No fights, no screaming, just time slowly pulling things apart. And then out of nowhere, he called. He asked if I wanted to come for Thanksgiving, said the kids would be excited, said Tina would be fine with it. And even though my gut wasn't sure, my heart still wanted to believe. I spent that Wednesday afternoon baking the old recipe. More cinnamon this time because I remembered Logan used to ask for extra. The crust cracked a little, but it held. I wrapped it carefully, placed it in the fridge, and picked out the red sweater I hadn't worn in years. It still fits, mostly. That night, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the pie like it might tell me what to expect. I didn't want to fight. I didn't need apologies. I just wanted to be let in to be seen. It wasn't about food or tradition. It was about whether there was still space for me in a family I helped build. So when I stepped outside the next morning, pie in hand, coat zipped tight, I wasn't just heading to Thanksgiving dinner. I was stepping into a house that used to be mine, carrying more than dessert. I carried 5 years of silence, a fragile kind of hope, and a question I hadn't dared to ask out loud. Would they actually want me there or just tolerate me enough to get through a meal? I checked the pie one last time before leaving. The crust had cooled just right, golden and steady. I could still smell the cinnamon, and it brought back memories of when Logan was little, asking for a second slice before it had even finished cooling. I folded a clean towel over the dish, slipped it into a carrier bag, and zipped up my coat. The red sweater felt snug around my arms, but it still looked good. It had pearl buttons down the front, and I remembered Logan once calling it my Christmas armor. The drive over was quiet. The streets were lined with yellow leaves, a few families unloading casseroles from their trunks. I parked across the street from the house. It looked so festive, like something off a postcard. Orange lights around the porch, a pumpkin centerpiece through the front window, the kind of holiday glow you expect to feel on the inside, too. I stepped onto the sidewalk, pie in one hand, a small bag of gifts in the other. My heart beat faster with every step. I could already hear laughter from inside, the soft hum of music, the clatter of dishes. My feet slowed at the top of the steps. I stood there a moment, not knocking yet, just listening, pretending the warmth in those sounds included me. The door opened before I even reached for it. Tina stood there holding a wine glass. Her eyes went straight to the pie, then to my face. She didn't smile. Her voice was flat, too smooth. Just here to eat, huh? My mouth opened, but nothing came out. The hallway behind her went quiet. I could feel eyes on me. I tried to keep my voice steady as I said, "Happy Thanksgiving," but it sounded smaller than I meant it to. She stepped aside, still holding the door like it was an afterthought. Her expression didn't change. Just enough space to pass through. I walked in, slowly gripping the pie tighter, suddenly unsure if I'd made a mistake just by showing up. My stomach dropped. Something about her tone didn't feel offhand. It felt rehearsed. And for the first time in 5 years, I wondered if I'd been invited only to be reminded why I hadn't come sooner. The moment I stepped inside, the warmth from the house didn't reach me. The air felt different. People looked up, paused mid-conversation, then quickly looked away like they hadn't seen me at all. I scanned the room for Logan. He was by the fireplace, drink in hand, pretending to laugh at something someone said. I walked toward him slowly, pie still clutched tight, my fingers aching around the edges of the dish. Before I reached him, Tina's voice cut through the room, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Guess we've got an extra mouth tonight." She laughed light and fake. Someone chuckled with her, but most just stayed quiet. My son didn't move. He didn't even look at me. I whispered his name, hoping for some kind of anchor. His eyes flicked to me, then away, like I was just another awkward guest who came uninvited. I asked if he had told her I was coming. He didn't answer. He sipped his drink eyes on the carpet. Tina walked past smiling sweetly at someone else, then turned to me just long enough to say, there was no need to bring food this year. Everything was catered. Her voice dripped with politeness, but it landed like a slap. I tried to smile. I told her I just wanted to bring something homemade. She rolled her eyes and walked away. No one said anything. No one offered to take the pie, or even a coat. I stood near the entrance, heart pounding, hands trembling. I hadn't even unwrapped the gifts I brought for the kids. I hadn't taken off my shoes. The sound of the party resumed around me, music, conversation, clinking glass. I could have been furniture. I turned toward the hallway, needing a moment. I found the guest bathroom, closed the door, and locked it. I sat on the closed toilet lid pie, still balanced in my lap. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat there trying to breathe past the tightness in my chest. I pulled out my phone, typed a message to Logan. Should I leave? I stared at the screen for what felt like forever. When the reply came, it felt like ice in my veins. Do what you want. My hand covered my mouth. I had no words left. Only the sting of being somewhere I clearly didn't belong, and the realization that the door I walked through that morning hadn't opened to welcome me. It had opened just enough to let me feel how unwelcome I truly was. The apartment felt colder than usual when I stepped inside. I didn't bother turning on the light, just dropped my purse by the door, and stood there for a while, letting the silence settle around me. The smell of soup still lingered in the kitchen. I had made it the night before thinking it'd be something warm to come home to after a long, joyful evening. Now it just smelled like something meant for someone else. I left the pie carrier on the counter without opening it. My coat stayed on. The candles I'd arranged on the table remained unlit. Everything I had done in preparation now felt like a performance for a show I wasn't even allowed to be part of. I sat down at the small dining table bowl of soup in front of me, but I couldn't eat. I stared at the empty chair across from mine. That used to be Logan's seat. I remembered how he'd cross his legs under the table and kick his shoes off, saying, dinner felt more like home that way. I barely touched the soup. The spoon rested against the bowl, forgotten. I got up, placed the bowl in the sink, and turned off the burner. Then I walked to the couch and sank into it, pulling a blanket over my legs like that might block out the night. The TV remote sat within reach, but I didn't turn it on. I wasn't ready to drown the silence. I picked up my phone instead, not to call anyone, just to scroll. My feed was full of families smiling around tables, turkey candles, kids in matching pajamas. Then I saw it. A photo of Tina and Logan, arms around each other, wine glasses raised. The caption read, "Thanksgiving with no drama." My breath caught. That smile on her face wasn't joy. It was a victory. And he stood beside her looking relaxed, like none of it had touched him at all. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. The comments were all the same. Beautiful family. So peaceful. Looks perfect. The lie of it made my chest ache. I set the phone down and stood up, needing to move to breathe to shake the weight off my shoulders. The buzz came while I was in the kitchen. A message. I grabbed the phone again, expecting a late apology, or maybe nothing at all. Instead, it was from Hannah. She'd been at the party. We'd only spoken briefly once years ago. I opened the message. I'm really sorry about what happened. You didn't deserve that. I thought you should see this. There was a video file attached. I hesitated for a moment, then pressed play. The screen lit up. Tina was in the kitchen holding a glass, talking to two women. Her voice was clear. I told Logan not to formally invite her. He just mumbled something about guilt and the kids. One of the women asked, "What if she shows up anyway?" Tina shrugged. "Let her. I'll embarrass her enough that she won't come back. Watch." My hands shook. I paused it, then played it again. Her words were deliberate, cruel. Then I heard it. Logan's voice low but clear. "Just don't make it a scene, Tina. She laughed. She makes a scene just by walking in. I froze. I stared at the screen, heart racing, and suddenly I knew. It wasn't just her. He knew. He knew everything, and he let it happen. I texted back. "Thank you for sending this. I mean it." Her reply came quickly. "I wasn't going to. But I saw your face that night. I couldn't stay quiet anymore." I sat down slowly. The video was still open in my hand. The apartment around me hadn't changed. The quiet still pressed in from every side. But inside me something shifted. Not rage. Not revenge. Just clarity. They didn't just humiliate me. They planned it. Together. I had spent years swallowing silence, thinking maybe I'd done something wrong. Maybe I'd been too much. Too needy. Too soft. But now I had proof. Real, undeniable proof. And with it came a kind of stillness I hadn't felt in years. Not peace exactly, but something close. Something solid. For the first time that night, I wasn't crying. I was steady. And I knew deep down this story wasn't over. Not yet. The next morning, I pulled out the old fireproof box from under my bed. It was heavy with paperwork I hadn't touched in years. Birth certificates, tax records, Margaret's will, and one yellow envelope labeled house transfer. I sat at the kitchen table, spreading the papers out slowly. My fingers trembled as I unfolded the deed. I remembered the day we signed it. Logan had just lost his job. I told him putting the house in his name might help him feel more secure, more stable. I'd trusted him. Told him it didn't mean I was leaving. He promised I'd always have a room there, said it was still my home. That promise dissolved 2 years later when Tina started leaving boxes in my bedroom and suggesting I might be more comfortable in a place with fewer stairs. I picked up the phone and called Marilyn. She had handled our wills years ago, a no-nonsense woman with a sharp mind and a soft voice. She answered on the second ring. I told her everything. From the invitation to the video. From the silence to the pie in the trash. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, her voice was calm, but firm. "Send me everything. The video, the deed, all of it." I scanned the documents and emailed them. 15 minutes later, she called back. I could hear her flipping pages on the other end. Then she said it. "Grace, you never gave up your right to live there." I blinked. I thought I had? She read the clause aloud. Right to inhabit the property for the duration of her lifetime unless voluntarily vacated or legally contested. It had been there the whole time. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. All those years I believed I had no ground to stand on, that I'd given everything away. But the paper said otherwise. It said I had a voice. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to use it, not out of anger, out of clarity, out of the truth that had been sitting quietly in a drawer all along, waiting for me to find it. Marilyn drafted the letter that night. It was sharp, direct, and rooted in every legal protection I hadn't even known I still had. She sent it certified mail addressed to Logan with a return receipt that would land on my kitchen counter 3 days later. I placed the signed slip next to my tea and waited. I didn't pace. I didn't overthink. I just waited. 1 week after the letter was delivered, there was a knock at my door. Sharp, fast, angry. I looked through the peephole and saw her. Tina. No coat. Sunglasses shoved up into her hair. Jaw clenched like she hadn't slept in days. I opened the door 2 inches. She didn't wait. "You embarrassed me in front of my entire family," she snapped. I kept my voice calm. "I sent a letter. That's not embarrassment. That's a consequence." She stepped forward, but I didn't move. Her face was flushed. Her voice shook. "We've been more than generous with you." I almost laughed. "You called me a freeloader and threw my pie in the trash." Her eyes narrowed. "You were never supposed to hear that." I stared at her. That one sentence told me everything. Not sorry, not regret, just exposure. So it was planned. All of it. The cold welcome, the fake smiles, the humiliation in front of everyone. I stepped forward just enough to meet her gaze. "You made Logan choose. And he let you." She looked away just for a second, then back. "You made your point," she said. "Now let it go." I leaned against the doorframe. I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing this because I've let people like you win too many times. Her voice dropped to a warning. You're going to regret this. I didn't blink. No, I already regret staying silent. She turned without another word, heels clicking down the hall like punctuation. I closed the door slowly, locked it. The apartment was quiet again, but the silence felt different. It wasn't heavy. It was earned. And for the first time in years, it belonged to me. The knock came just after lunch. It wasn't rushed or frantic, just steady enough to feel official. I looked through the peephole and saw two uniformed officers, one holding a clipboard, the other with a calm, unreadable face. They introduced themselves, asked if I was Grace Harmon, and said they needed to speak with me about a harassment complaint. My stomach didn't drop. I didn't panic. I simply opened the door wider and let them in. I already knew who filed it, and I already had the truth. They sat at the small dining table while I pulled out a folder from the kitchen drawer. I handed them a copy of Marilyn's letter, then opened my phone and played the video. Tina's voice rang out clear, followed by Logan's silence. The officers listened without interrupting. When it ended, the younger one closed his notepad. He said it wasn't unusual for someone in Tina's position to try and shift the narrative. The older one asked if I felt safe. I nodded. I told them I wasn't scared, just tired. They advised me to document everything. I already had. They left without incident. No warnings, no suspicion. Just quiet respect. I closed the door, then stood there for a moment, breathing in the kind of calm that only comes when you've told the truth and someone actually hears it. The next knock came 2 days later. It was Logan. He looked smaller than I remembered. Shoulders slouched, dark circles under his eyes. He held a manila envelope in one hand. I let him in not out of forgiveness, but out of closure. He sat down and slid the envelope across the table. Divorce papers. His voice was soft. Said he'd found Marilyn's letter in Tina's drawer. Said he hadn't known the full extent until now, but I didn't ask why it took him so long. I already knew. Fear is a powerful thing. So is comfort. He asked if I could ever forgive him. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I asked him one thing. Tell your daughter the truth. Don't let her grow up thinking I was some desperate old woman who showed up uninvited. She deserves better than that. So do I. He looked down, eyes shining, then nodded. He promised. I believed him. Not because he said it perfectly, but because for the first time in years he didn't avoid the weight of what he'd done. We didn't hug. There was no grand reconciliation, just quiet. Real. Still, he left soon after and I didn't cry. Not out of strength, but because the tears had already done their work. I had nothing left to prove. My silence had never been weakness. It had been a space. And now I had filled it with something stronger. Truth. And finally, dignity. That Saturday afternoon, I dusted off the old photo frame and slid a new picture inside. It was from last week's potluck at the community center. Just me and a few friends, arms around each other, smiling with our heads thrown back in laughter. I placed it gently on the shelf right next to the old family portrait, not to erase anything, but to make room for something else. This wasn't about forgetting. It was about choosing. Choosing joy, peace, and the kind of love that doesn't ask you to shrink. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged.